In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Tim Maleeny is the author of the award-winning Cape Weathers series of mysteries and the best-selling comedic thriller Jump, which the Boston Globe called hilarious and Publishers Weekly described as a perfect blend of cocktail and escapism. His short fiction appears in several major anthologies, and he's won the prestigious awards, including this year's Silver Falchion at Killer Nashville. The Cape Weathers mysteries are smart, snappily written, energetic mysteries starring an engaging hero, and the latest is The Hanging Devil. Tim, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here, Terry.
Give us the 411 on your latest.
All right, the latest, Hanging the Devil, is an art heist. There's a robbery in the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. Some of the book is based on actual crimes that did occur. And a helicopter comes in, they want to steal some paintings and leave some forgeries, which isn't your typical robbery. And things go horribly wrong, someone gets killed, and then as the investigation unfolds, you learn a lot about the art world and how a lot of art crimes are actually interconnected. So you learn about smuggling, you learn about forgeries, you learn about the art factories in mainland China, and how art can sometimes be used, stolen art can be used as collateral by organized crime for all sorts of nefarious things. So it's one of those things that opens with a local crime in San Francisco where my novels take place and then spools out to become more of a global thriller.
As writers, we always come to the stories we create with a blank slate, and you just described a lot of different professions there. How do you research a book like this?
So I spent about 2 years wandering around museums, getting dirty looks from guards when I was checking out the cameras instead of the paintings and trying to figure out how many exits and whatnot. And the opening event, both the location and the triggering event for the story were very clear in my head. So I had the opening and I had worked through that. And then I thought, okay, I want to learn everything I can about how to break into a museum, how to get away with it, and then some of the other things associated with the story, this notion of forgeries. And for about 2 years, I read books, interviewed people, watched documentaries, and learned so much. And exactly to your point, I learned a lot more than I could ever put in a book or want to put in a book. So I left out about 90% of the research that I did, which might show up in other future books. But it was a fascinating glimpse into that world. And as you know, there's a number of art mysteries out there. So I wanted to do right by the subgenre and really get the details right.
Your Cape Weathers series is definitely a series, but each book is very different.
Yes, they're written as standalones. And some advice I got when I first became part of the crime fiction community, I had this conversation with Lee Child, and he mentioned that most people discover writers 4, 5, maybe 6, 7, 8 books in. Mm-hmm. And then they say, oh, I like this book, and they go back and read your backlist. And every book needs to work as a standalone. It's very different from the fantasy world where you might have an epic fantasy trilogy and you're reading them in order. And I have moved around a little both in tonality and certainly subject matter. You have some recurring characters. They're all based in San Francisco, but they all move around a bit. One jumps back and forth between San Francisco and Mexico. This one goes back and forth between San Francisco, Hong Kong, and mainland China. And the subject matter is very different. This one deals a lot with art. The previous one had to do with a very, very popular tourist destination in San Francisco that's almost as popular statistically as Disney World, Pier 39. And it had to do with money laundering and some other activities that may or may not go on in that particular part of the city.
There are some sections of Hanging the Devil that are laugh out loud funny. How do you inject humor into a genre like this?
I came into this as a huge fan of writers like Elmore Leonard and Donald Westlake and Lauren Esselman and Carl Hiaasen. Yeah. And some of my books have been described flatteringly as Hiaasen-esque and others a little closer to Elmore Leonard. For me, humor is a way for some characters to deflect, to take the edge off. You never know how people are going to react in stressful situations. And that's really what crime fiction is, ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Furthermore, not all criminals are rocket scientists, so there are some knuckleheads involved who are going to do horribly stupid things, and when things go sideways, they really go sideways. And to me, the humor comes out because of the situation and the dialogue of those characters under stress in the way that it does in the great sitcoms. If you think about Lucille Ball and the Chocolate Factory stuffing her face with chocolate, we're laughing, but it's deadly serious to Lucy. That is a horrible situation. And you think about Seinfeld or Friends, all the social embarrassment and things going wrong, everybody's playing it straight. There's no laugh track. So when I write some of these scenes in the book, I don't think of them as funny, but they become funny as the characters react and in some cases overreact to the situation they're in.
How was it that you came to writing? Because you had previous lives.
Previous lives, like all of us, right? Yeah. It's never a straight line. For me, I had grown up surrounded by books. I was very lucky that I had two parents who both had science backgrounds. My mom was in medicine, my dad was a chemist, but they loved to read. And all the paperbacks from, we're talking Edgar Rice Burroughs and all the adventure stories of the 30s, not to mention the classics, were always in our house. And every time we moved, my dad and brother and I would build bookcases to make sure there's room for the old paperbacks. And I could read whatever I was, tall enough to reach in terms of the bookshelf. And when I was thinking about going to school, there was this sense of, okay, doctor, lawyer, scientist, because that's what you did. It's not like, you're going to go run Marvel Comics or write for a living, or it didn't occur to you. But I always had this itch to write stories, and I was always the guy, and still am the guy who, when I'm in line in the grocery store, I've got a book in my hand. I'm always reading. So I went to college, got out, started to work. I was working in advertising and traveling a lot. And on the airplanes, I started to think, okay, what if you wrote stories you wanted to read? Maybe try your hand at this. So I started writing short stories. I just started scribbling short stories in between meetings, on planes, as I was traveling, and started sending them in. And they started to get picked up. And one got picked up, and then it got pulled into an MWA anthology. They made it the title story, and Harlan Coben was the editor, and Lee Child was in that book, and all that. And through that, I got the confidence to try to write and finish a novel. And I realized there's this whole crime fiction community that I did not know existed. And there are conferences where you can go and meet these people and talk to these people, and they are incredibly generous, and they will talk to you about writing. So that just opened up a whole new world for me. And suddenly I realized, wait, there's people who are as geeked out about this as I am that you could talk to all the time and maybe learn from each other. So that was a great gift to get in through the short story path as I tried to figure out what I wanted to write and how I wanted to write.
Tim Maleeny is our guest. The newest book is Hanging the Devil. It's part of his Cape Weathers mystery series. Tim Maleeny, MALEENY.com is his website. That's nice about having a name like that where you can get the .com, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure makes it easier.
How did your experience as an advertising guy impact the way that you write?
One of the things in advertising is you have to convey ideas in a very compressed time frame, right? Maybe 30 seconds, shorter, think outdoor, 7 words. And I was always attracted to writers where the pages kept turning and things moved fast. I like short chapters, I like crisp sentences. Not all writers are like that. Some you get lost in the language and it's beautiful and it's great. So this sense of pacing was natural to me. I also, coming into that world, was not only a big reader, but I'm very much a cinephile. All things, I love theater as well, but like with film, I think I've watched over 2,000 films. So to know that part of it for me was great, because as I write, I visualize the scenes and I sketch things out and I draw pictures and stuff like that. So I think just getting used to the idea of you need an idea, you need another idea. That idea is not good enough. Jump to something else. That iteration and giving yourself permission to have bad ideas while you have great ideas and then work through it was a good training ground for writing. Because let's face it, writing, you need to be able to handle rejection, you need to be able to ideate quickly, you need to be able to recognize a detour and then get back on track. So all of that, I think, came about from what I was doing day to day in a job, really.
We're recording this at Bouchercon. Why do you come to conferences like these?
So Bouchercon is amazing. I mean, this year we have 1,200 or more people, I think, here. So for me, there's 2 huge benefits. As a writer, you get to meet people who have read your books, had an impact. For me as a reader, when you read a book that gives you an escape or change the way you look at things, or you just love that book, that's a gift. So anytime I meet anybody who's read one of my books who's excited about the book or the series or anything, that's an unbelievable connection. And whether that's one person or 100 people, that's a great joy. It gives you that motivation and inspiration to keep doing it. And then for me, talking to fellow writers and readers, but especially some of the writers working through the same stuff, it sparks so many ideas. This is the most generous community, the crime fiction community, the nicest people you are going to meet. And let's face it, writing is a solitary task, and the ability to think out loud with like-minded people is a gift. So I try to come to the conferences whenever I can.
What are people that you've met here telling you about Hanging with the Devil? What do they like about it?
They love the mix of humor and tension. There's a couple of characters in here. A big part of the book is carried from the point of view of an 11-year-old girl who's in jeopardy. And a lot of the readers really took to her and really wanted to make sure she was okay through the course of this book. So the identification with the characters was really strong. One woman said to me today, actually, which is the nicest thing, she said, everything I love about reading is in this book. She said, it's dramatic, it's exciting, but then I could laugh, and then I found myself smiling, and then I was on the... So the highs and lows of it seem to have worked. So I appreciate that, because you know that some books you read and they're escapist funny, and other books are dark and moody, and it's almost, what mindset am I in? And I did try to mix it up a little in this book and take people on a ride, and that seems to be resonating, so I'm grateful for that.
If you were on a panel right now speaking to other writers here at Bouchercon, what advice would you give them about how to tell a story?
I would say start telling yourself a story. I'm not an outliner. We always talk about, are you a pantser or a plotter? And I start writing, and then you're asking yourself, what happens next? What happens next? And while that sounds like a high wire act, before you know it, some structure falls in place because there's a logical progression to the thing you set in motion. So if that inciting incident, that moment of that catalyst for everything that happened is well thought out, the rest of it falls into place. And then the other thing is, try to get better at writing than you are at procrastinating. That is my personal struggle at all times. I think I'm a pretty good writer. I am a world-class procrastinator. So, that's the wrestling match we all have day to day, right?
One of the things that I really love about Hanging the Devil is the depth and diversity of the characters you've created. How do you do that?
I was told early on, there are no secondary characters. So think of it as an actor would, right? You're the guy in the corner holding the glass of water. Be that person, right? There's a motivation that's going to have that person walk across the floor or drink that glass of water or something like that. So when I think about a scene, I think about who's in it, why are they there, and I want that person to be fully imagined. And whether I'm talking to them or we're spending a lot of time with them, in my head, that person has to really exist. So the little details and the quirks of the personality, and let's face it, people are interesting and people are a lot more complicated than they at first appear. And I've always liked quirky characters, especially in the criminal world. So in this book, you deal a bit with the Russian mob in San Francisco. You deal with these smugglers who operate out of Hong Kong. There's some people who are from the Chinese triads. And drawing on the history of those organizations and the personalities and the collision between those cultures makes it really interesting. And you want to think about everything from how they talk to how they dress to how they look and how they interact with each other, and that's where you can have some fun with it. And then I try to put them in impossible situations and see what they'll do, right? It's you'll let the pinballs go across the machine and see what happens.
Tim Maleeny is our guest. The book is Hanging the Devil. It's the latest in his Cape Weathers mystery series. His website is timmaleeny.com. One of the raps that we sometimes get as white guys writing people that are different than we are is, how dare you do that? And you write these characters from other countries and other cultures very well. How do you learn enough about that to make them authentic yet tell a great story?
Yeah, I love that question. For me, as a writer, the whole act of reading and writing is an exercise in empathy, right? That's why we read books, is to learn about people different from ourselves and see the world through somebody else's eyes. And you have to do the homework and you have to get the details right. And I have readers and I have people read these manuscripts and say, yeah, that's right, that's not. I jump around a little bit between different languages, and you have to do the research like anything else. And I think, the suggestion that, oh, should you be writing this or should you be writing that is absurd. It's like telling a photographer or painter, hey, paint this dinner party, but don't paint these people or those people. Or your job is to represent everybody who's in the world you're creating, which in my case, because I'm writing contemporary fiction, is the real world. What do they look like? What do they sound like? What do they believe? How do they act? So like any other kind of research, spend time with those people, walk those streets, get it right, really. And to me, that is where interest, empathy, tolerance, joy comes from, is those interactions and bringing those characters to life.
The Cape Weathers Mystery Series is a fantastic series. Each book can be read as a standalone. You don't have to read them in order. The latest is Hanging the Devil, and our guest is Tim Maleeny, timmaleeny.com. How do you like to interact with your fans? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can reach me through the website. Email is great, and conferences like this, any book appearances, that kind of thing. I try to put myself out there, but people can reach out anytime. I love hearing from readers. I love interacting with them. As you were saying earlier, it's always fascinating to see what strikes somebody about the book that they read. What was their favorite character? What made them smile? Where did they get stressed out? There's a character in this book who's an unlikely character. It's a macaque monkey, actually. There's a bit in labor camp, and the monkeys are part of a kind of an experimental surveillance system, let's put it that way. But the monkey became an important character to another character. And I got one note from somebody who had read the book who said, I really hope you write a spin-off with the monkey as the protagonist. And I thought, okay, that hadn't occurred to me, but all right, that might be worth trying.
What question didn't I ask that you wish that I had?
I think you covered it. For me, the question that most people ask is, why crime fiction? And for me, I think that crime fiction can be tied to all great fiction, right? From Homer through Shakespeare to, something got stolen, Lord of the Rings, something got stolen, someone got killed, someone went to war, that kind of thing. And it puts people under pressure, and it gives you the chance to find your own moral compass and think about life's issues while having fun, right? It's entertaining. And that's what reading should be. It should be a great escape. So for me, anybody out there who loves to read adventure stories, crime fiction, mysteries, thank you. And let's all keep reading and keep writing.
Tim Maleeny's stuff is always a treat to read. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Terry. Great to see you.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.